We got to be done, what, about 10, 15?
4-minute warning. 4-minute warning.
We're good. It's open.
Hey, Diocese of Spokane, we are standing here on the deck of Wells and Wallace. We want to thank you so much for the generosity with which you have given to support camp. And we are doing such amazing things. And the kids are just having a glorious time.
I think we've had a wonderful summer, so thanks for supporting us. It's been great seeing all the kids come out, enjoy the place, grow, sing, play, pray. It's fantastic.
And so thank you. Thank you for your gifts of the past. Thank you for the gifts of today. And thank you for the gifts of the future. There are multiple ways to give. Not just with money, but some of the other ways.
Yeah, go online to campcross.org and donate that way. Come and donate your time. We'd love to have you out. Come volunteer with us, help in the kitchen, make curtains. We've had all kinds of things happening this summer.
That's right. It's been great. Thank you. Through your generosity, 250 individual pairs of feet come through here this summer, and more are coming, and we're on a roll. So with you and your support, the work of God is happening here at Camp Cross. Thank you. Call the convention back to order and call upon Dean Heather for our opening prayer.
She went around the long way. Good morning, friends. Before we begin with prayer and orientation, Leo. Before we begin with prayer, no. The speakers do sound tinny from up here too. So we're just going to keep going because this will allow them to better be able to adjust. Good to see you all again. I hope you all slept well. And the like, for those of you who didn't sleep well, we'll be continuing to have coffee. Come on out. Just be patient. And if you're the person who's at the end and you're like, oh, there's no more coffee, especially regular in it, just tilt it forward a little bit and you will get like 2 to 3 inches more in your cup. or have a friend help you do the tilt so you can tilt and pour. But we're going to be keeping you all caffeinated. There's also decaf, and then kettles for hot water with tea. For those of you who prefer your coffee to be cold, we will be bringing out some iced coffee. Sorry that we didn't have those out today or earlier this morning. We do have. You've got water on your tables, and you may have noticed that there is an orange Gatorade-style jug in the back. And so if your table runs out of water in your carafe, someone from your table can pick it up and take it on over there in order to refill, because we're keeping that filled with water. So just an option there for you. All right. Restrooms, just a reminder, in addition to the two that are multi-holers on the other side of the wall here, there are two single ones on this wing, on our family ministry wing. And if you haven't been on our family ministry wing, don't just go there in order to use the restroom. Take a look, because the cathedral's really super excited with what our Sunday school director, Sarah Robertson, has done in terms of making that hallway really a friendly space, and bringing it from sort of its 1970 vibe into like now. So also take a look in the rooms. We've got some younger friends who are there, but you have a chance to look through the Dutch door and see those spaces. So there are two restrooms on that wall. There's one back by the kitchen, and then again down towards the cathedral, and you can make your way on down there as you have need. Restrooms. This is where I get to feel like, a flight attendant for all of those. So remember that the restroom might be behind you. So with that, friends, first, a prayer meditation blessing from John O'Donohue's To Bless the Space Between Us, a book of blessings, and then a more formal prayer. And the more formal prayer, which I used yesterday, comes out of a disciples' prayer book, which is out of Native traditions and published by the Episcopal Church. So this blessing poem prayer is called Matins. Somewhere out at the edges, the night is turning, the waves of darkness begin to brighten at the shore of dawn. The heavy dark falls back to earth, and the freed air goes wild with light. The heart fills with fresh, bright breath, and thoughts stir to give birth to color. I arise today in the name of silence, womb of the word, in the name of stillness, home of belonging, in the name of the solitude, of the soul, and of the earth. I arise today, blessed by all things, wings of breath, delight of eyes, wonder of whisper, intimacy of touch, eternity of soul, urgency of thought, miracle of health, embrace of God. May I live this day compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, generous in love. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Creator, we give you thanks for all you are and all you bring to us for our visit within your creation. In Jesus, you place the gospel in the center of this sacred circle through which all of creation is related. You show us the way to live a generous and compassionate life. Give us your strength to live together with respect and commitment as we grow in your spirit. For you are God, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Dean. So the parliamentarian reminded me this morning that technically when we do things out of order, we're supposed to vote on approving doing things out of order. But only God is perfect. And in that vein, it also occurred to me, to my chagrin, that there is a priest of the diocese who has, we have failed to ever recognize that they were ordained in our standard at the beginning of the year, beginning of convention, changes of status. Yes. David Sibley suggests those are the voices in my head, but I don't sing like that, so.
Apparently it's a common vision.
Yeah. Are we still? Only God is perfect.
Test the microphone, please. Test the microphone.
All right, so I'll just keep talking. If I need to, I can put on my I'm on the fire department outside voice. All right. If this day is your ordination anniversary, I invite you to stand up. Come on, Kathy. All right. And I realized that last year at convention, there was a newly ordained deacon who we failed to name. And then then they become a priest, and then you were like, yeah, do you say anything or not? Has it been too long? But no, you should do what is right. Rachel Jackson. Oh. Thank you. And how's the sound? Are we okay? No, we'll just keep talking. Okay, so I don't want to have to do a report up there until I know the mic is working. So I'm going to just keep going. Yesterday, I announced a new chancellor of the diocese, and I want to recognize the previous chancellor of the diocese. And one of the things that I love about Scott Miller is that there's usually a little twinkle in his eye, right? And I don't know whether it's out of that, just delight or out of a little bit of impishness, right? Depending on the circumstance, it could be either, right? Are we good? We're good? Right. So also what I know about Scott is he would sit up here and it'd just be calm. No matter what, he'd be calm and just sort of keep things smooth. And that smoothness would sometimes help those of us up here that were perhaps not as smooth and calm. And there's a sense that he made us better, right? Now, what I know is that tonic water is good. But you can add things to it that makes it better. And those things can be smooth with a little twinkle, right? And so, Scott, I have for you a little gift. It's too early in the morning for you to partake of this. But thank you for being our chancellor. Thank you for your ongoing work. Absolutely. So. with that, I recognize Ken and Andrea to introduce our next congregational story.
Good morning, friends. It is a joy to introduce to you Kate Rogers. And Kate, feel free to come up as I'm introducing you. Kate Rogers is the Bishop's Warden of Church of the Resurrection, located in Roslyn, Washington. So about as far west as you can get before you hit the Diocese of Olympia. Kate is going to share a story with us about listening and responding that comes from Church of the Resurrection in Roslyn. Welcome, Kate.
Wow, things do indeed look different from up here. Okay, so stories. Stories are glimpses of how we see into our culture. I know you all have stories. You have family stories, you have professional stories. My background was as an operating room nurse, so you can imagine my stories during lunchtime. Maybe you don't want to go there, but that's okay. I have a story about a question. And that question resulted in being curious about a relationship and God's mission for the Church of the Resurrection in Roslyn. During the summer of 2023, the Washington Outdoor School, practicing in Roslyn, was searching for a space that they could call home. They are indeed an outdoor school. These little tykes from maybe 3 up until 7 or 8 are outside, whether it's 10 degrees outside or whether it's 90 degrees outside. It's just what they do. They are a part of nature. However, when it is so cold, they need a place to come in order to use the bathroom, have a bite of lunch, or as the school became certified, to actually have their lessons. So they came to us. What a blessing, right? The initial thought was, how great will it be to have children in our space again? And at the same time, it would increase our presence in the community. We're that little green church on the hill. Secondly, the hall was basically unused during the day. Somehow or other, that seemed like we were being less than good building stewards. Thirdly, both the church and the school were in transition. Why not fill the space with the love of children, even with no rent? Sorry about that, Bishop. However, the arbitrary $300 was decided upon working with the Washington Outdoor School. What did that do? Well, it provided a safe place for them to shelter with us, and it provided a $3,600 boost to our annual income. Use it for our spending plan. We were blessed. We could use it for additional outreach. That space was filled with the love and the laughter of children, both during the school year and during their summer program. Now, during the training for the reserve sacrament, the bishop and I were talking about the Washington Outdoor School. Now, what does the bishop do really, really well? She asks questions, okay? So she said, does the outdoor school perceive you as being a partner? Because, of course, I had said the Washington Outdoor School, and I said, we are in partnership with each other. Then the question. So the question was valid. I knew it was a valid question, yet it needed to await a response. I didn't have a response. And it turned out to be the driver to probe deeper into the understanding of our relationship with the Washington Outdoor School. So it was time for me to be curious. It was time for us to be curious. What does that partnership look like between the two groups? So initially, I went to the congregation, I went to the bishop's committee, and gathered thoughts, the listening piece of things. So it became evident from the church members that they felt a strong relationship with the school. They felt that it's important for the children and their families to be present in our midst. They felt that activities, that happen together are symptoms of a partnership. There's that word again. And that there was not a valid reason to raise the rent. The relationship with the Washington Outdoor School is seen as us listening to God's call in a ministry in accordance with living out our new mission statement. This was key. We did the mission statement so that we could look at it and evaluate through it and with it. The question about whether the Washington Outdoor School considered itself as partnership with the church was answered as Sybil, the director of the school, the teachers, and I talked about what do we have in common. The commonality that really stood out for me was that we have three separate things, yet the same things in our mission statement, and we didn't even know it. We have inclusivity, we have involvement with the community, and we have creation care, all as a part of what we are in our community to do and to live. So a strong and evident example of our partnership is in the garden and our grounds. At the beginning of the growing season, the Washington Outdoor School and some folks from our church gathered in the hall on a Saturday afternoon to exchange seeds, learn how to make seed tapes, and do a seed exchange. Then our gardens have now become actual community gardens. Well, what do I mean by community gardens? It means that the folks from the Washington Outdoor School have taken over responsibility of the herb garden. They're working with the meditation garden. Secondly, we have involvement from people in the community. Some of you may know about Suncadia. Actually, I talked with a few of you here about that. So it's a residential community as well as being a place to come and spend a great weekend. So we have people from that environment that are coming to work in our gardens. We also have worshipers from the startup evangelical church next door that are involved with the community garden. And then thirdly, but certainly not lastly, we have several high school students that are coming to maintain the gardens, to plant the gardens, to replant. And most recently, they came to harvest. Now, I want you to picture a 15-year-old high school student that's been a part of 7 of her colleagues working in the garden all day. She gets in the pickup truck to go home, and she looks at the gal that is directing the gardens, and she, with tears in her eyes, says, "Thank you for letting me come here today. Thank you for letting me come here today." How about that? Pretty cool, huh? So another example of this, if I don't stumble over the words, is Pollinator Palooza. Try that one out for size. Good thing I only have to say it once. So we did a Pollinator Palooza, and we joined with the folks from the Washington Outdoor School to sort of take over the Roslyn Yard, which is a little public space in between 2 buildings in downtown Roslyn. It often does movies, bands, or whatever. But we wanted to do something that would help educate the public about pollinators. And so we got together a group of people. We had a beekeeper that provided education about pollinators and bees. We had our member Chuck sawed wood to make mason bee houses. We gathered the children to paint those and talk about bees and what they knew about bees. And then the rest of us were sort of just there to paint, play with the children, and talk with the community. Again, we answered questions about what's happening with that little green church up on the hill. So we were provided with opportunities to talk about the church is affecting our lives and how they too are welcome into our community. So examples of direct results of this partnership include an increased awareness of our church's presence in the community. We currently have fire and Washington State certification as required for education in the building. and an automatic defibrillator device has recently been purchased, which we will learn how to use, and I hope never to use. So, in conclusion, I believe that the relationship with the Washington Outdoor School is fundamental to the mission that God has given us. This is a community partnership in the truest sense of the word and is the basics of building bridges. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kate. Chair recognizes Canon Andrea and Canon Alex for report on forming.
Good morning again. It is a deep joy and honor to introduce my friend and colleague, Canon Alex Flannagan, who has joined us from the west side of the state. Alex moved here 7 months ago from Shelton, Washington, and is our Canon for Youth and Family Ministries and also our Camp Cross Director. Yes, yay. He and his household have just purchased a home, not yet moved into it, so they're in that limbo space, but they will be living in Spokane Valley, Alex and his partner Mariah and her parents. Alex has been serving on Episcopal camps and conference centers since 2008, and additionally serves on the boards of both Camp Blue Spruce, which is the only overnight summer camp in the country that serves children with food allergies, and also St. Andrew's House, a retreat center in the Diocese of Olympia.
And it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, the Canon for Discipleship, Andrea Utman. In the process of taking her late grandmother's last name, Andrea is mom of Kason and Sharon and Silas. If you haven't met them yet, they're a hoot. They came to camp this summer and we had a very good time. Andrea comes to this work with a background in church planting, religious education, teaching and development, and a myriad of various church leadership roles. Andrea's been in this position as Canon for Discipleship for 5 years now, and also recently brought her first home in Spokane. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now we're on to the slides, dear Tiffany.
And we also have Andi here, who will be introduced in just, Alex will introduce them. Sorry for needing to wait. So our diocesan mission is to form, nurture, and develop disciples of Jesus Christ in strong communities of faith for the transformation of ourselves, our communities, and the world. We collectively say that being disciples in the context of communities of faith leads to transformation. We are disciples and we do so together. These two portions of our mission make up the gist of our Canon presentations today. So Canon Alex and I will be presenting on making on that first forming, nurturing, and developing disciples of Jesus Christ. And then right after lunch, Canon Susan and Canon Caroline will be sharing on in strong communities of faith. And I'd like to think that our entire gathering here today brings in that third portion of our mission, the transformation of ourselves, our communities, and the world. We will be sharing stories together. Some may be from this microphone, some may be over meals, and some may be on your drives home and in your congregations and the myriad of gatherings that occur. We share our stories of how we are being transformed by God's love as we follow Jesus together. But reeling it back in then, Canon Alex and I are going to be presenting on being disciples. Discipleship is the journey in which we become more like Jesus. Which brings us to this large overarching question: how do we form disciples in our diocese? This question, of course, is not just outward focused. How do we form others into disciples? But it is also always an internal question. How are we being formed alongside nurturing others' formation as disciples? We become disciples in many ways, and here are three. We discern together. We learn together. We practice together. So we discern together, we listen to God, we listen to one another, and we listen to our own experiences and our senses and our longings. We discern. We learn together. We commit to this life of following Jesus, and we grow and learn throughout it all. We all have high highs in our life and despairing lows in our lives. And throughout it all, we learn and experience that God is with us. God is with us in all of it. And we practice together. Discipleship is not prescriptive. There's no formula or three-step program. There are no grading rubrics. There's no finish line. We try things out as we follow Jesus, knowing that we have chosen a path of perpetual practice in which we continually discern, learn, and practice together. So now the question: how have we discerned and learned and practiced together in this past year? In an oversimplistic nutshell, I will be sharing about adult formation, and Canon Alex will be sharing about youth formation. So each of the canons are required to write a report for convention, kind of detailing the work that's been done over the previous year. And I invite you to read the report that I wrote and that Canon Alex wrote as well for more details. But I'd like to just highlight a few different ways, 3 different ways that we as a diocese, as a group, have stepped into discipleship together in this past year. The first thing I want to mention is how we have listened together this year. Our diocesan theme has been Speak, Lord, we are listening. We have been intentionally listening together. We've had our examine and our breath prayer. And I don't know about you, but the breath prayer has lived deeply with me this year. I can't tell you how many times I've inhaled, Spirit, give me curiosity, and exhaled, Christ, give me courage. I invite you to do that with me. Inhale, Spirit, give me curiosity. Exhale, Christ, give me courage. We've had our diocesan prayer, which has helped us to remind us that we are listening always to the voice of God, to the voices of those around us, to our own longings and senses. We've had our gathering days in which we've listened and story told together about the different ways that God is impacting us. We've had scripture studies on listening this year. We've engaged monthly First Thursday Zooms on things like congregational storytelling in our annual meetings, developing congregational mission, missional budgeting, evangelism, and many more. We have listened. The final photo of the listening section was one also of a group of folks who had gone through a community of hope training in our diocese, including our sister Tracy Waring, who is no longer with us. And this group set aside time to intentionally learn how to listen well and to be the ears and presence of Jesus to those who are going through difficult times. Another way our diocese has been doing discipleship together in this year has been our Pride response. This is the Community of Hope photo. There are folks. And that wasn't the entire group. Those were the ones who were available to come to St. Andrew's Episcopal Church on that day and receive a certificate from Bishop Gretchen. Another way we've leaned into discipleship together this year has been in our Pride response. This image is from last year, an ad that was developed and ran in the Spokesman Review in two different issues, and then showed up. Many of you asked for this ad as well and created localized versions of it and ran it in your local papers as well. And this was in a response to a pastor in Spokane who called for violence against queer folks. Also, Pride this year, we showed up in many ways. Here's Bishop Gretchen and Philip. Bishop Gretchen funded a mural downtown in Spokane that's on the roadway that got defaced for it to be repainted, and she was invited to be the Grand Marshal of the Pride Parade. So here is Gretchen and Philip leading in the Pride celebration. We also had local congregations. We had youth who participated in Pride, and we had our local congregations, including my church, West Central Abbey, and Deanna Harris, who is the leader of that effort. Please go find the West Central folks and ask about the chicken outfit. I love these pictures because it matters. When we say we follow Jesus, that our discipleship shows up as love. And when people are treated with violence and hate in the name of Jesus, it matters that we speak up and say no. God created every person in the image of love. God loves every person, and we love every person, and we are explicit about that. This is a form of discipleship that matters. And the third one I want to highlight is a program called Being With. We've had 3 different groups in our diocese go through the Being With program this past year, 2 of which I led, and one that was out of West Central Abbey that Reverend Katy Shedlock led. If you participated in one of the Being With groups this year, would you kindly stand? Friends, please look around and note the folks who are standing and go and ask them about their experience. The Being With group is a wonderful mashup. Thank you. We'll do that in just a minute. I appreciate that, Michael. Being With is a mashup of deep theological grounding with godly play wondering. It's a setting in which there is deep listening and connection. And it's a safe place to wonder about God and our faith journeys. I hope to offer many more groups and to have others lead groups in our diocese using this program in this next year as well. If you have participated in any of the listening things in our diocese this year, any of the things that have been offered, if you have prayed the diocesan prayer, if you have stepped into discipleship in your local context, I want to say thank you. It matters when we are the hands and the feet of Jesus, and what you do matters. Thank you.
Again, it's just a joy to be with you this morning and to serve in this position. Camp Cross and Diocesan Youth Ministry. Oh, yes. We're trying out a new technology. So I'm going to talk about a few different things, starting with the mission of camp and how do we go about taking it out into the rest of the diocese with the youth and with congregations year round. So the mission is to form, nurture, and develop disciples of Jesus Christ in strong communities of faith for the transformation of ourselves, our communities, and the world. And I love that it's aspirational and it's achievable and attainable. Yes. So love it. I'd like to draw attention to the sign at the top on the arc here. It says, welcome everyone. And so I really do think it starts with a strong and warm welcome that is planned for and intentional and carried out with love. Hospitality is a key part of operating a good camp, just like it is a key part of operating a good church. The way that we set that first impression can go a long way. Show of hands, who's been to Camp Cross before? Almost everyone. Excuse me. Fantastic. And then show of hands, who has not yet been to Camp Cross before? My new friends. I look forward to extending the hospitality and welcome to you. Before we go further, I will just acknowledge and I want to celebrate. I'm coming in at a very privileged time. The Woven as One campaign was 5 years long to raise money for a new retreat center at Camp Cross. And I've inherited this moment where now we get to begin, where we get to break ground. And so in the spring, we'll be beginning to build a new retreat center that will be more physically accessible and comfortable. And so I hope, I've talked with a lot of people already, some of those physical barriers to entry to coming to the camp, we're massaging them, we're working on them, and we hope to be able to welcome you and meet you where you're at too. So more to come about that, not today though. Oh yeah, this one has an animation. So this is just informs most of, how do I put it? There's a lot to talk about when it comes to camp and the ministry, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for those who aren't familiar with it, we begin at the bottom and we have physiological needs. The goal of any program is that transformation piece, coming in the self-actualization. We would like ideally to reach the top of that pyramid and give people a meaningful experience that they can take away with them. We can't do that if we're out of toilet paper, or if people are hungry or haven't slept, because we devolve. So we sequentially, and this is one of the key things I train the staff in at the camp, and Andi, thanks for joining me. We'll talk about their experience at camp shortly. Training the staff, because when you're there for this residential experience and you have a whole bunch of young people and young adults who have needs, it's often a question of priorities. Where do we start? How do I serve? And so I really enjoy equipping the staff to use this tool. How do I serve? Well, start thinking with the physiological needs. What do my campers need? Do they have the jacket or the appropriate clothing for the day? Have they eaten? Do they need a snack? Have they had a nap? And then move on up. The safety and the love and the belonging is equally as important. If you're coming into a place that doesn't welcome you, that doesn't greet you, that doesn't affirm you and help you to feel safe, how can you open up and feel like you belong there? How can you have this experience where you get to open your heart and show who you are to others and be mutually witnessed? So I'm almost wrapping up. The Anglican Church has 5 marks of mission. They are there. I don't think I need to read through them all one at a time, but this just kind of informs some of what I've picked out as key markers that I think Camp Cross is uniquely, maybe not uniquely, but especially positioned to do well. First of all, look at it. It's beautiful. So creation care. I have a Jacques Cousteau quote, which is, people will protect what they love. And so part of what Camp Cross excels at is helping us to be renewed in our love relationship with the earth and with Creator. We're outside a lot. It's beautiful. And I do think that people leave with a newfound appreciation, especially if they live typically in a city or perhaps, I don't know, just don't go outside much. Youth today play a lot of video games. It's okay, but this is where the magic happens. Next, one of those marks of mission is to respond to human need by loving service. There's 2 parts right there. There's the human need that I've already kind of talked about, but loving service. Camp Cross is a place that we call the opening weekend labor of love for a reason. There is love and it is laborious. Things need to be maintained out there and it takes hard work and dedication. And lo and behold, young people show up and they look like that while they serve. They're thrilled. They scrub toilets, they serve each other meals, they clean up after one another. And sure, sometimes they gripe about it and complain a bit, but then they're on to the next thing. And I just think it's wonderful. Oh, yeah. Camp is fun. It's all these things, it's intentional and it's community building. It's also just really fun. By meeting all those needs on that Maslow's hierarchy, we create a community there each week of love and belonging. And again, it starts with the staff who set the scene. So folks can be immersed and truly present to one another and to themselves, both witnessing and being witnessed. And it is very much an emergent quality. We can plan all that we want. We can try to control the variables, but then we have to have that faith moment and let Spirit do its thing. And what happens is pretty glorious and real. And then one of my other favorite, I talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Another key piece that informs the way I like to help camps to run is experiential learning. The idea that experience plus reflection equals learning. So if it's all just go, go, go every minute of every time and, oh, let's tire the kids out so we know they'll sleep, there's a golden opportunity being missed. By building in intentional time for reflection, by asking them some of the questions that are in the diocesan materials, by building in time to just enjoy food together and have downtime, and those, again, kind of organic questions. What was the favorite part of your morning? Even just tell me a joke. Those reflection moments allow people to process all of the experiences that are crammed into that time at camp so that they can actually learn something and walk away with newfound knowledge and insights. And there, I use this phrase very hesitantly. It's gone down differently in different places. There's a phrase, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But I really want to emphasize that's not so at camp, or at least I hope it's not so. What happens at Camp Cross should stay with you wherever you go, and you bring it with you. The week at camp comes to an end. The summer wraps up. We leave the mountaintop, hopefully having experienced some transformation, and then we're equipped to be better disciples. So we say goodbye, and then we come back and we rejoin our churches and our communities. We go to our soccer teams and all these things, and we are disciples in those places, and that's, I think, how it works. So I'd like to introduce and invite my friend Andi Hartwig. Andi worked with me at camp this summer, was a camper there, and yeah, I'd just like to hear about Andi's experience a little bit. So thank you, Andi.
Thank you, Alex. I have been a camper at Camp Cross for 14 years, and I have loved every minute of it. Every summer, I remember coming back from Camp Cross and feeling my faith stronger and feeling like I could take on more than I had ever thought possible. This summer, I was blessed with the opportunity to spend the summer working as a staff out there, and I learned so much about myself and the importance of community and service. I started off the summer coming out to Labor of Love, and it was a blessing to be out there in the beautiful camp and get to serve and work to get it ready for all of the youth that were going to come that summer. I found so much joy working, like Alex said, scrubbing toilets, and it was not painful in any way, despite how unfun the task might be. I knew that I was serving a greater purpose, and that has continued to fuel me throughout the start of the school year. And this summer, I have learned that feeling like you are serving others and working towards a greater goal is one of the most important things you can do to find happiness for yourself. I wish that I could spend more time out at camp because I have never felt as close to God as I have when I am out there. The community is so strong and so welcoming. And when I am out there, I know that I am loved and seen. And I feel like I can focus on how I can help others and how I can build myself and grow as a person. Like Alex talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it is at Camp Cross that I feel I can reach self-actualization and discover for myself what it is that I want to do with my life and what my purpose is here on this earth. I learned that throughout this summer the importance of service and came back and decided that I wanted to find a job continuing to help work with and serve youth. And I have continued to pursue that. And every step that I can take to continue that act of service is hugely important for building my confidence as a human and feeling like I am doing something meaningful, and has made me so much more comfortable in this world. I am so grateful to Camp Cross for giving me the opportunity to reach those places and feel that connection with God. And I hope that so many more people will get that experience. And I am so happy to continue to do everything I can to work there and provide that for more people.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Andi, especially. Chair calls on Jeremy to give a credentials report.
Good morning, Bishop. The Committee on Credentials would like to report that we have 3 more clergy who have checked in since yesterday. We continue to maintain a quorum of clergy, and we have had 1 more congregation check in. We continue, congratulations everybody for being here. We continue to maintain a quorum.
Jeremy, Chair calls on Sharon Nitz, Treasurer of the Diocese, for a Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Bishop. The Diocese of Spokane is one of the richest dioceses in the United States. We have a diocese full of leaders reaching out over 50,000 square miles. We have missions and goals that reach 1,000, thousands and thousands of needy people. We have parishes that are rich with people, all colors, all kinds, who are caring for their neighbors. We have 32 communities of faithful Episcopalians that pay their diocesan assessment every month on time, in full, so that our bishop and her staff can not only pay the bills every month, but also support goals like Camp Cross, the Church Growth and Development Project, the College of Congregational Development. We are truly one of the few Episcopal dioceses in the nation that have 90% of our congregations paying their askings regularly, monthly, in full. What a blessing that is. These acts of reaching out to those in need, welcoming those who are searching, listening to our youth, and caring for the widow and the orphan make us very rich indeed. Are we wealthy? Probably not. Okay, definitely not. But we have much to be thankful for. As treasurer, let me tell you our story. in monetary terms. You are the leaders of this diocese, here representing congregations of loving, hardworking, caring Christians, here to listen and learn, pray and observe, to be rational about the issues and people we have been called to represent. Those issues include finances. The good news, God loves you. The other good news, Bishop Gretchen and her staff informed me that our diocese as a whole is in good shape financially, so thank you. And the bishop thanks you, I thank you. As delegates, please be sure to thank the people at home when you go back and tell them thank you. There are people willing to donate their time to help with your questions. If you have needs that must be addressed or goals that you dream of starting, the bishop encourages you to use reserve funds in your accounts to make the problems less or the project better. It is good to have reserve funds, yeah, but they should not be left in the account when the money could be used to make congregations healthier. That is what they are there for, a reserve for a rainy day. It does no good to have money in the bank if the doors to the church have to be closed. Applying for a church growth and development grant is another way to get the help you need for growth of programs, mission, people-oriented goals. These grants are not for building repairs, but think about it. If you have a grant for ministries that enriches your spiritual lives, and that improves the congregation's worship, and that attracts new members who pay pledges, then that equals a healthier parish. That's how it works. Being good stewards of our money can lead to being good shepherds of God's people. So, about the budget and assessments for 2025. You've been listening for this information, right? The council has determined that assessments for 2025 should be in the same percentage as they were in 2024. Based on your operating expenses and averaging the last 3 years of those funds, assessments will still be 16, 18, 20, and 22% of your operating expenses. What you pay in dollar amounts could change. That's based on your operating expenses. But the percentage of that amount due in 2025 will not change. The 2025 budget will go before Diocesan Council for discussion and approval, shown in various formats, is in your convention packet and was shown at the pre-convention Zoom. In addition to assessments, our diocese also receives income in the form of grants. 2 of the grants we received this year come from the Lilly Foundation. Lilly has extended the sustainability grant for another 5 years in the total of $500,000. It is this grant that makes possible the $450 educational grant each year to our active clergy. If you haven't claimed yours, please do so. Lilly has also awarded our diocese a grant in the amount of $1,240,000 that will be used to underwrite the Building Bridges Healing Divides project, launched in June of 24, to help our congregations thrive. And 2 of the diocesan staff members have their salaries paid through this grant as well. One of our congregations has repaid a loan that came from the bishop's building fund. This means that that money is now available to others who would need that help. Also, add to our assets a bequest given by a member of this diocese, and with God's help, those funds will plant a new Hispanic congregation in our diocese. All of these funds contribute to the bishop and council being able to offer the church growth and development grants to congregations throughout the diocese. Watch for information in news and notes or diocesan digest for these grants in 2025. In the office, as most of you know, Lori Boss resigned the 3rd of September. She worked as diocesan financial officer for 12 years, overseeing our financial day-to-day debits and credits, paying taxes, computing payroll, cutting checks, keeping us organized financially. Before she left, Lori helped to transfer all of the accounting from a paper desktop situation to online banking via QuickBooks. Big job. And we wish her well and pray for her well-being. Fortunately, for the office and for the diocese, Bishop Gretchen was able to quickly hire a new financial officer, Sarah Nowak. Welcome, Sarah. I look forward to working with you. Sarah has been hard at work since her very first day with the diocese, bringing the financial statements up to date. If anyone wants to see the 2023 end of year finances, Sarah can help you at the table. She's over there in the northwest corner. And if you have questions about the current financials, Sarah can also show those to you. Just ask her what you need to know. As a child, I grew up with both sets of grandparents no more than 2 miles away. I heard a lot of old wives' tales, received a lot of advice, and occasionally expressions of frustration. One expression that my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, used when she was exasperated was, "Oh, for the love of money." For her, that was cursing. We don't love money, do we? We do not base our successes as Christians on money, do we? My report is about money, true. It would be hard to pay the utility bills without it. Likewise, it is not about money. It is about how with money, caring for our neighbors, caring for the hungry, caring for creation. What I hope you hear when I share the good news of the budget is not how much money is in the asset column, but where that money can take us, how it can give us a path growing our parishes, for building new friendships, for starting new confirmation classes, for teaching the way to Christ. It is a resource that we must diligently use wisely, not being greedy or self-serving, but rather being generous for the love of God. I move that the convention approve the assessment to be set for the coming year 2025 as a sliding scale of 22, 20, 18, 16% based on operating expenses.
Thank you, Sharon. The assessment has been moved. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We're going to move to break and move one of the other. Yeah, but it's break time. Before we move to break, we have announcements.
Good morning. Are we on? Good
No.
morning. Says it's on.
Try it again.
I have turned it on and it's not working. That's all right.
Okay.
We'll try this. Thank you. I thought I was going to use steel mill lungs here for a minute. The camp van will be making a run to pick up youth and adults for the fall youth retreat, which will be here at the cathedral, November 1st through the 3rd. We will be stopping to collect participants at All Saints in Richmond and at St. Martin's in Moses Lake. Pickup time will depend on youth availability after school on Friday. Please let Bill Osborne know. Bill, would you stand up and wave so we can see? Please let Bill Osborne know if you expect youth from your community to attend or if they would like to come with a little extra encouragement. He is glad to provide it. We will deliver the youth back to the pickup spots at the end of the weekend. Please extend the invitation to any youth in your community, grades 7 through 12. If anyone finds a small pearl earring, please let Liz know up here in front. From Holy Spirit standpoint, or talk to anybody from Holy Spirit standpoint, we're looking for a small pearl earring. And then a reminder that the deputation from General Convention, both clergy and lay, who went to Louisville this summer, will meet during lunch today to finalize our afternoon presentation. That's it.
Thank you. We are officially, Chair recognizes Zavetta. Turn the mic on.
This is just a point of privilege. I am in awe and humbled by the treasurer's report. Sharon, I've never heard a treasurer's report given with such spirit and grace. So thank you.
We are back here at 10:15, which means we have a 10-minute break. 10-minute break. Back here at 10:15.
There, I got it.
Dead battery. I do, you know.
No arguments. No fights. No fights.
I'm going to bring this down. Because we're going to go to program now.
Pardon me. If I take up too much space or anything, because that person's right. I take up no space.
Return your seats.
This is your space. Yes. I just need to hold on to this. Yes, here, and that you can hold on to me too.
This is your call to return to your seats. I know. All right, let's regather. Let's regather. Get that cup of coffee, return to your seats. Get that muffin, piece of cheese, fruit. Let's return to our seats. I know the coffee is great, the goodies are fun, but let's grab them and return to our seats. We have more to do, more to learn.
All right, you don't need me up here for
Yeah. Liz is suggesting I say, sit, Lulu, sit. Yeah. And how about not just return to our seats, but let us return to silence. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
It intentionally give you a whole bunch of information and then leave you to think about it all night long. I wanted to say a couple things about what we talked about yesterday in terms of developmental orientations and how it's best to hold this new information we've learned about ourselves as a community. The first thing to remember is that with the exception of a handful of people that actually know their results, none of you know how you personally function in your developmental orientation because you didn't actually get that result. What you got was a result that showed you how this whole group functions, which is mostly in minimization. And that means when we're talking to one another about these new insights, it can be helpful to remember that you don't know other people's orientations. You only know what people are showing you in terms of their skills and behaviors. And one of the things about these developmental skills, and when we talked about how we continue to use those skills, even if we have more skills now, like I still know how to roll over and crawl, right? I don't do it all the time, but if I have to change a tire, I'm going to do that, right? So the thing about these skills is if you see a behavior and you think, oh, that person is in polarization, stop yourself. Because it could be that that person is using a differentiating or discriminating skill in order to do more adaptive behaviors, right? It could be a different reason than you think that you're seeing that behavior. It's also true that because we live in a pretty politically polarized society, we have a tendency to think people who disagree with us are polarized. Right? I'm not, but if we disagree, clearly you being stubborn and not agreeing with me means you're polarized. Right? Which is, right, we can laugh, but that could be wrong on a couple counts, right? It could be me. But it also could be like that I just don't know that about that person. They could just disagree and be using different sets of skills to try and accomplish their objective appropriately. So it's important then to remember that when we're talking about these orientations, unless you've received an individual result or talking to someone who has told you that I function in minimization or I function in polarization, acceptance, adaptation, you should treat it like a hypothesis. Just like we don't stereotype people, we look for testable generalizations and then we treat it like a hypothesis, a guess. And when we're being careful with each other, that's the best way to be. In fact, I'm a qualified administrator of this instrument. I could look up in a chart and pretty clear, you probably wouldn't even understand the chart, but I could tell if I knew your name, your orientation from that chart. I don't do that when I talk to you in a group like that. I don't even do that unless I'm debriefing you individually, because it doesn't help me respond to you better and have a better conversation to base my response to you on a diagnosis instead of what you show me in the conversation. So remember, when we talk to each other about this stuff, humility. You don't know what you don't know. And if you behave like you know it, you're going to not have the fullest conversation because you're not listening. And that's the thing we're trying to do. So remember then, if people who disagree with you vehemently are not necessarily in polarization, and because there's a group that is specifically thinking about depolarization, I want to say, remember that when we're talking about this orientation, not just the wider cultural pattern, but this particular way a person behaves, what you would expect to see for someone who is really focusing on judging and differentiating as their primary way of understanding difference in the world, is that they're going to have less nuance. And likewise, if somebody is actually not in polarization, they're going to be more nuanced. If someone's in polarization, they're going to be less tolerant and more stubborn, like not listening to the other argument and really not able to repeat it back, for instance, right? But people who are more developed tend to be more tolerant and less strident and stubborn. It's not 100%, right? It's more and less. And it also is true that particularly once we get to this orientation of minimization and then further, so remember, we're mostly in minimization. Once we get to minimization, we start to value interpersonal relationships and the structures that allow us to talk in balance with being right. Right? Like, it's important that there's a place we can talk about the fact that we don't all agree. And once a group decides it's important that there's a place, that's actually more important than me getting to decide what we talk about, what we decide. It is those higher levels of intercultural competency that tend to be able to put aside the being right about culture and the way we do things and move towards institutions that can sustain themselves, for instance. So there will always be, remember, this is a bell curve, and it means you're taking a snapshot at any point in time. And if you see a bell curve over time, what that actually means is all the time, some people are growing and some people are entering. You never get an organization all the way to the end, right? If you did, there would be no new people. For us, that doesn't make sense. That's not our our call, our vocation. It wasn't. So when we think about this, it's important to remember being at the stage you are is important for the group you are a part of. And rather than judging it as like unskilled and therefore unhelpful, we should think about ways to create actual helpful contributions from all of the different orientations, because each one has a skill. Okay. Those are just some things that as I kind of wandered around last night, I heard some things. And I thought those skills are going to experience these conversations differently. So let's talk now about culture, values, and developmental orientation a little more deeply. I was really focused on kind of teaching you last night those developmental orientations, but now it's time to kind of think about that in terms of our wider culture and the values we hold. So if we remember that culture, I would say it's it's all of the ways people learn and teach each definition that I could give you. I could give you one that has a lot of more bigger words, but I don't think that's helpful. The reason I chose those words is that it's critical to remember that whenever we're talking about culture, it is not an individual exercise. It's absolutely impossible for an individual to have culture separate from others, because culture is always reinforced, created, and taught. So culture requires multiple people. The other reason I think it's important to use a definition like this is that it includes both the function of good person, which is a set of norms that govern what we think is right or wrong when we are hanging out together about how to do things. And it also includes this element of teaching and learning, because culture is never, again, just so. Culture, then, it comes from that root that we use when we talk about cultivation, growing things, pruning them. And that is socially what happens when we think about culture, whether that's how we teach each other when to stand up and sit down in church, or if we're teaching each other other things. And again, just like with our developmental orientations or other aspects of our core identity, you can't actually know other people's culture. All you can know is what they show you, right? Which means you are an interpreter of others and their cultures and the signs that they give you. So what we can know are things like how people sleep, eat, toilet, work. We can't fully know how you got from the value that you have around those things to the behaviors and why you do it that way. And I think it's important for us, again, if you think this culture stuff has nothing to do with our deep truth that exists outside of ourselves and is totally transcendent, the God who exists no matter what and is objectively real, we can't actually know that God that way. We only experience the sacramental reality. That's why the sacramental reality is so important to us. It's because those outward visible signs, just like in our cultural performance, the visible signs, those are the things we see and make meaning of because we are able as humans to access it. We aren't God, so we can't understand it the way God understands it. We can only understand it the way humans understand it. So it's actually kind of the same. The stuff that's in us, that's our operating system, the way we think you should behave in the world that gets programmed into us, we don't get to see the code. We only get to see the output. So, sorry, I would go back one. I took a long time trying to find some pictures. And if you type in teaching to Google in an image search, it was the saddest thing I ever saw because every picture, it honestly looked like this room. Some adult person standing up and either adults or children sitting and apparently absorbing information or something. But that's not how humans acquire culture. Right? This is how humans acquire culture. So this is a culture of the YMCA soccer team.
that my kid is on. And what you see here is actually, because if you think about it, we have a coach and people trying to figure out how we are going to overcome a challenge. A bunch of little kids running the other direction, right? So we've got an elder, we have other people with experience, and they're working it out together, right? They're learning and then they're doing it. And they get reinforced for doing it or not. That's the kind of learning we're talking about when we talk about culture. It's not reading a book. It's not a lecture. It's all the little ways you've been taught it's not cool to cut in line. It's all the side eye. It's all the correction. It's all the, thank you so much for speaking so clearly. It's the rewards. It's the praise. That's learning. That's how most humans learn most of their stuff, right? And 18, even if you don't send a person to school, if they speak and can function and read, they learn a lot. They can do a lot of important human things. This is how we learn culture and the most important stuff. So Christians have had a lot, sorry, this will take a second. This is the sort of culture stuff that I was talking about a moment ago. But let's go to the next one. So these are the ways Richard Niebuhr thinks that Jesus and the Christ interact with culture. He argues that sometimes we see Christ against culture, challenging the cultural norms of his day. Sometimes we see a Christ of culture, being present to people in the membership culture groups that they are in and not judging or punishing them. Sometimes we see Christ above culture, kind of a transcendent Christ God who can judge, who can kind of come in and heal, who isn't really captured by our present day kingdom of man concerns. We find also, we'll keep coming back to that one, Christ in paradox with culture. Christ saying, I am not culture. And also I'm interacting with it, right? This is the crazy thing about in Christianity, we have all these things that they're mutually exclusive claims, but we claim them anyway because God is big, right? And also that Christ has a role in transforming culture. And this is kind of, I think, where he lands in terms of his own set of preferences. But here I think it's important for us to remember Jesus the Christ was both God and human, we say. And humans do have culture. We function inside culture because we are rewarded, punished, and live in bodies together. So Jesus's complicated relationship with culture is that he pre-existed that. So we want to get real abstract and theological. Jesus happened before culture, right? Unlike us, this is one of the ways we're different. Jesus pre-existed culture, but we didn't. And we have at least a mythological story of how we got from the beginning to now. So unlike Jesus, every behavior we perform has always been learned from and shaped by other humans. Jesus had extra information from God in his pre-existence that we don't have. And Christians in our tradition, the Episcopal Anglican tradition, navigate this. How do we understand Jesus as a figure who is human and then took part in culture, but is also God? We do tend to focus on the scriptural understanding. So you've heard me talk a lot about the Bible. That's important to Episcopalians and Anglicans. We also care about the traditions, things that we have been taught to do because we think they are good for us. That's traditions. That's what that means. And our reason, the thing that God built into our bodies, our brain machines that God gave us to process all of this wondrous creation. We Episcopalian Anglican people think that these are the sorts of ways we should navigate and understand culture. And in particular, we structure that understanding and cultural discernment in the Episcopal Anglican tradition in particular ways. How we govern ourselves, how we organize ourselves. Not every Christian church has a convention. There's a reason why we do, though. And it's because culturally, we think that the body, well, theologically, we think that the body of Christ is gathered in its resurrected form as the church. So we want the way the church functions to reflect our values about that, about righteousness and order instead of chaos and things like that. So we do things together because of that. Christianity in our tradition is not a solo exercise. You can't not go to church and be a great Christian in our tradition, right? So we do some things together, and therefore those things are culturally shaped, like we discern new leaders. And I don't just mean priests. We are picking from our congregations which people we think are the good, right ones to lead. And it's based on what our understanding in our culture and our congregation's culture is of what it is to be a good leader. We have conventions and vote on matters of mutual concern. This is actually about cultural history. Jesus didn't say you have to have conventions and vote on bishops. We do because we come from an English Christian tradition that relies on common law, what they call synodical governance, which is a group of people hanging out and making a decision together. That is a cultural construct. You don't have to do this to be Christians. We do, but one does not. So it's important then, and it's not good or bad. It's like our government system. There's good things about it, and there's things about it that are less functional, but it certainly emerges from a particular cultural understanding of how you should do things. So when we talk about culture, and now we're going to go to another slide, people tend to think when I say culture, I mean race. And I want to be really clear that when I talk about culture and the tools that we use, we purposely use because they're bigger than that. That is one really important element of American culture. We have historically divided people by race and probably unconsciously continue to do so. Like there are structures we can point to that say we know historically when that happened. But here, there are a whole bunch of other cultural differences that when we talk about culture and intercultural development, we are also talking about. And they include, there's two here that I have, because these are both actually from models that we use in the College for Congregational Development or are using here. So in the College for Congregational Development, we use this addressing model. And you can see that the categories that these authors use are age. Who knew that people of different generations have different cultural flashpoints? Who knew that some people who are very young or very old have less access to resources? Right? Who knew that? Disability is one. Our bodies, whether or not our culture says your body is not enough. Right? That's one. Religion. We are Christians. And I know Christians who think we're not, funny enough. But we are Christians, and that is like, in this culture, that's like the thing to be still. It really still is. We've got ethnicity. That one does sound like one we know. Social class. Well, Episcopalians never have social class issues. Right? Sexual orientation. This has been a growing edge for us in the Episcopal Church and one that we have chosen to take on as a wider body. How we reconcile that. Indigenous background. there's a difference between people who have a learned culture tied to a place for hundreds or thousands of years and people who got here more recently. We think about the place differently. National origin. If you were born, grew up in another country, first of all, you still are learning how to do this differently than somebody who did it the whole time here. But also, we value people who are from here more, right? Or gender. And you can see in the IDI workbook, so if you get an individual debrief, there's a workbook, and one of the exercises asks you to select 3 of these things to think about how they shape you. But look at this list: gender, nationality, race, ethnicity, age, family background, widows, divorcees, single folks, people without kids, ages, or abilities and disabilities, religion, educational background. How many letters do you have to have after your name? Where you're from. I know people who moved to the Pacific Northwest who changed their accent because people think if they're from the South, they're conservative and not smart. Sexual orientation, our work experiences, like our level of employment. These all are experiences and ways of being with other people that create culture. They create group membership. So when I talk about culture, and you're thinking about culture in your congregation, it might be the hot thing of the moment to focus on sexuality or race. But I would really encourage you to think about what is happening, what is God doing right here? And it's still intercultural work if it's not race or sexual orientation, because we still have a lot to do to overcome all these other kinds of differences that we have. In fact, those ones are the ones that like activate us the most, get us the most anxious and afraid, which is why they talk about them so much, because then you'll pay to listen. But these other ones, they're the stuff of neighborhoods, right? Like, who's the widow in your neighborhood? Who needs cookies? Who just moved here? Who needs to be oriented? Okay. So we heard just a beautiful presentation about the way you and the Diocese of Olympia are forming disciples a little bit ago. And what I am excited to talk about now is our baptismal ministries and our discipleship that we've taken on. Every person here, I'm pretty sure, if you're here and you're a delegate, you have to be a communicant in good standing, right? So everyone here made promises in their baptism. So we are going to talk about the ways culture shapes out how we live our baptismal promises. Because I have this strong hunch that we all made these promises, but we don't do it the same. We don't do it the same because our congregations teach us to do it differently, and we don't do it the same because we've been taught to be human differently. So if you turn to page 6, I want to walk you through the first exercise, the first question set. Let's give you some examples here. So when you do this exercise in tables, as a group, what I've actually encouraged you to do, I've included all of the baptismal promises. You will not get to them all. But I did include them all because I think it's actually a helpful exercise to think about how culture impacts all of them. It was good for me to think about it, but also because you could do this later. Like, you don't need to do it all right now. So we're going to practice with 1 or 2. So for the first one, I want to model for you how I would like you to do this at the table. So the first thing is to pick the question, pick one of the promises. So I'm going to pick worship as the example. And of those, I'm going to pick a question that is either speaks to me, it feels like I can answer it, it makes the question make sense. Now that may sound like a strange thing to say, but when I asked these questions, I was actually thinking about different orientations and the way they would think about this thing. So it's possible that one question might actually not make sense to you. And one might make a lot of sense to you. So I'm going to pick the question, what music, language, clothing, or ways of doing things at your church make you feel spiritually at home? So I'm going to tell you a story, and if I were going to do this at the table, I would write my notes about my story. And then when it was my turn, I would share that with the group. So for me, the thing to know, I'm going to talk about the church where I was baptized. And the thing to know about me is when I was a little girl in 1987, my mom worked with AIDS patients. And this was before HIPAA, so I actually met them all. I met a lot of people. And I wasn't a Christian. We were not a Christian family. And I remember just meeting these people who were so kind and funny, and they were nice to me even though I was little. And I felt like grown-ups don't have to be nice to kids if they don't want to be, right? But they paid attention to me and cared about what I thought. And a thing I knew is that some of them, their families would not talk to them. And some of them are going to die with just their chosen families. And they were going to die in ways that at that time were really painful because we didn't have inhibitors, if that's what Christians think. And then after I had a conversion experience, I started checking out churches. And when I came to Christ Church Seattle, one of the things I noticed is that the altar guild directress and treasurer were lesbians. Like they were a couple. And this church allowed people who were gay to be leaders. That way of doing things was like, oh, I'm all in. The way you do things makes sense to me. That's the way I think it's supposed to be, that regardless of your sexual orientation, at that time I thought, regardless of your sexual orientation, you should be able to serve Jesus if you're a Christian, right? That made me feel at home. It's actually not about whether being right. You hear, like it actually doesn't matter if you think so or not. I felt at home. So now you're going to have a couple minutes to write, like 5 minutes. But first, before you do, at your tables, agree together on one topic. Try and do this together. So you're going to pick one question, and you're going to write for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to talk. If I can move around. And just do one of them. thing. I'm just going to push that back. Hmm. So after some mingling, I've detected a little confusion. Apologies for that. We're going to have one round of this exercise. You should pick one baptismal promise as a table. And then once the tables pick that baptismal promise, individuals can pick which question makes the most sense. Because y'all are going to think different ones make the most sense. And then you'll talk about it. This will give you a chance, if you do have different developmental orientations reflected at the table, to share your best culture. Even if you haven't finished notes, this is a good time to be talking. like freaking out, and I should just stop freaking out. Don't know the schedule, but that's okay. Oh my gosh. So now that we've had a chance to talk about one question, we'll wrap up those conversations. I didn't mean to just I feel like, oh, everyone got very...
Many different things about what is similar and what is different. And I had just shared with our table here that we felt some political differences yesterday with our table. But one thing that we can agree on is God. And if that's not an amazing common denominator, then maybe we need to revisit these things of, where we stand and what we believe in. And for me personally, I just love the tradition. It doesn't matter what congregation I go to. When I walk in, everybody's so friendly. People I haven't seen in a while. They're like, oh, you were here at that location at that time. And so even if you might be dealing with something in your life or the world is a little tumultuous and you put on social media and you're just like, where am I? One thing that is amazing is we're here. And I think we all believe in the sacraments. We all believe in tradition and ceremony. And I think we all resonate from this vibration of kindness. So thank you.
Thank you. Somebody maybe then from a back corner, anybody in the hinterlands want to share? I will walk the microphone to you. I will linger and lurk until someone feels the Holy Spirit. Anyone? Back here. Oh, I heard a noise. Thank you.
I can speak what I just heard. Wherever I go to church, at an Episcopal church, that's my home. I know that I will love the service at any Episcopal church that I attend. That means the world to me. I was raised Roman Catholic, and somebody said, well, Episcopal is Catholic light. And that's not right. We are the Episcopal Church of the world. When I was in the Navy, I went to church every Sunday, which my mom found delightful. But I promised her two things in my life. One, I would not drink until I was of age, and I did not, even though I was in college before I could do that. And number two, that I would go to church every Sunday. Mom and Dad went to church, and this is part of my culture, every day. Monday through Saturday, daily Mass, 6:30, and church on Sunday. But the Episcopal Church is my home. You cannot take it away from me. You cannot take it away from me. And I love it. As I expressed myself today, everything about the service I love. And I also tell you today, in this place, I love you. Amen.
So when we think about our results that we heard yesterday, what I would expect is that it feels better when we're talking at the table to focus on those things we have in common. God, the way we worship. Right? That's going to feel really good. And as we develop, one of our challenges is going to be to start to feel more and more okay hearing that people do it different. Like that, not just we do love God, but I love God a different way than you. I love my kids and you love your kids, but I show it a different way than you do. That those conversations become easier, natural. If we want to move from a place where we mostly have conversations that focus on commonality and universal values to incorporating differences, the challenge is going to be when we feel like those differences start to appear, maybe letting them sit and feeling like, oh, maybe I don't have to assert that we really all love the prayer book. It's great too, and I love the prayer book. And I love all kinds of Episcopal churches where the music and the dress and the liturgies feel really different. Our ability to sit with that tension is one of the skills we want to build. So now I want to talk about our congregational cultures. So our baptismal promises or our discipleship promises as individuals, and we live them out in culture because we're talking to other people and we're in a church. But the culture of our congregation is about an inheritance, a tradition that we've been given of ways of doing church together. So I want to share a story with you. This one is not up on the slide, so you will have to listen, and I will try to read well. But this is a story from Matthew's Gospel. Jesus said, "Take care that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you, in heaven their angels continually see the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think? If a shepherd has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and go in search of the one that went astray? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray. So it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones should be lost. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if two of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them." So this is a classic passage. This is one we kind of know. And I think about this one in terms of balancing the majority and the minority, right? That's a thing that we hear in this story. But even more than that, this is some of the most explicit teaching about congregational culture that I can find from Jesus. Paul talks a lot about how people should behave in church. Peter, or whoever wrote those letters, talks a lot about how people should behave in church. Jesus doesn't a lot. So this is one of the clearest examples of Jesus telling us how to do church culture. So when we think about a congregation, a group of people who are acting out a faith culture, the way Jesus asks his followers to do in this passage, we would think about the values and the mission, as well as the behaviors that are supposed to correspond to those values. So here, we hear in Jesus's teaching a value around individuals. One person's life is important. That's a value statement. Not everyone has to accept that value statement or behave on it the same way. We hear in Jesus's teachings a desire for reconciliation. It's implicit and explicit, but it's at least implicit in you keep having to do this behavior until someone really shows they do not have the capacity to do it with you. That's saying it's important enough for you to do it over and over again until you really can't. That's a value statement. There's also a value placed on agreement. If two ask for it, they'll get it. So Jesus is saying it's good when we come to consensus, right? Those are values that are embedded in this story. But there are also specific behaviors Jesus asks people to do to live out these values. He says, point out the fault. Not don't say anything, not let it go. Point it out to the person. It needs to be resolved. We hear that people whose faults are pointed out are supposed to listen and change, right? That's why Jesus keeps sending those members back to the person, because the ideal thing, the right thing for them to do is to listen to one another and then be transformed or change. Jesus instructs his followers to create persuasive coalitions, to talk to other people and bring them into the conversation so they can feel the emotional labor, so they can fully be invested in what happens next. Jesus tells the community to share the work of decision-making with increasingly more people. If two people can't get to the right decision, bring more in. And finally, we actually hear Jesus say, if someone keeps hurting other people in the church, ask them to leave. Which is not a thing we talk about a lot. But doesn't it make sense that a culture with integrity has to have a boundary that you can't cross? There's some things you cannot say and be a part of this group without Jesus's intervention and forgiveness and transformation of your life and signs of penitence and metanoia. Jesus has, I think, a sense, at least in this passage, we get a sense of how we're supposed to resolve conflict. That is one aspect of congregational culture, how we do that. It's like other things we do. So when we think about our congregation and how we resolve challenges and conflicts, we do so with the values, our mission, and also this overlay of the way we've been taught to do it, either before we were part of the church or as a part of this denomination or congregation. So if you can turn to your booklet starting on page 9, it's at the kind of bottom of page 9 or the beginning of the directions. So our experiences as congregations have shaped how our congregations respond to challenges. And we navigate difference and similarity depending on the skills and capacity we've developed. So for this exercise, we are actually, we don't have to be in congregational teams for this one. And this exercise, what you're going to do is we'll have another 15 minutes. And you're going to take time and this one, you probably just need to pick one like last time. There's a few areas. You could pick worship, and that's on page 10. You could pick outreach on page 12 or formation on page 13. So for each of these areas, and most congregations do at least one of these things. There's some optional responses and it says our congregation, and then there's sentences. You should pick the sentence that matches your congregation. So if your congregation praise in regular, unified ways that include celebrations or members or partners. Like you have church and people come who hang out in the community and you do it regularly and you all know how to do it. That might be the choice. And then you're going to answer, why did I pick that? What are the what are the examples? What's the evidence that that's how we do it? You're going to ask yourself, what's good about it? That's that value thing. We're going to get it. What's our value around how we do this? And then what are the downsides? What are the things our way of doing things might miss or leave out? So you'll have 15 minutes to, as a group, work through one of these. You can decide if you need to take notes first or just want to dive in. Pick one and talk about it. Yes.
Do you mean pick worship or formation or pick one page?
So just as a clarification, your table should choose one of those topics. Each of the topics is on a different page. Any other questions about the task? Great. And pay no attention to the directions. They're inaccurate. Listen to my words, not what it says. You know, I'm just gonna remind you about the developmental mindset and queue up the rest of the next session, and then I'll be done. It'll be very quick. Good.
Yeah. I mean, at least for us, it's been and we reject.
Yes. Yeah. Are we on now? Yeah, we're on. All right, let's come back together. Thank you all for your engagement. I want to wrap this session with just a couple of helpful things to carry with us moving into the afternoon and our time together. One is a reminder that the work that we're doing, that I'm inviting you to do, is really based on a developmental mindset. And this is one where we don't strive to be perfect. We strive to be better. And we strive to be better based on what is required of us, actually, I would say, in Christian community in particular, in this room. Our goal is not to be perfect because things are only perfect in Christ. Our goal is to imitate Christ and to disciple. And so hopefully we've gotten a little more opportunity to work with our individual discipleship practices and how those might be influenced by our culture, as well as think now about how when we gather into community, we are growing our ability and skills in holding each other, the people we have with whom we share a lot in common, as well as really starting to recognize how rich and important those differences can be in our ministry. So when we move into the afternoon, you're going to have an opportunity after we're going to frame up how this work fits into a bigger story. The big story to me of salvation, the big story of how we in the Episcopal Church are reaching out and doing the work of the Great Commission to go into all the world and preach the gospel to the ethne, to the nations, to the group of people who share culture and language. So we are going to have a chance to think about our rule of life, perhaps as individual disciples if we want, or as a congregational team, think about that information that we've been gathering as we've been listening this last year and how we might use that and the tools we've learned to, frame our ministries moving forward. So we'll have opportunities to do that. And I'm so excited to get to do that with you, and also just want to, again, reiterate, in all of these things, be gentle with yourselves and one another. This stuff we're working with is our treasure. It's our best stuff. It's the stuff we love about being a person with other people. Be kindly with one another and yourselves, and remember, your goal is not to be perfect. It is to be just a little better with God's help. Right. Bishop?
Thank you, Ari, and again for a great program.
Good morning. My name is Katy Shedlock, and I am the vicar of the West Central Abbey. Our congregation is almost 6 years old, which makes us one of the youngest congregations in the diocese. And as a church plant, we receive financial support for our ministry through your assessments and through grants from our denomination and other sources. You can read the full report to the convention in your materials that were emailed out. Ours is the very last report in the packet, but if you get there, it does have pictures. We are working towards applying for mission congregation status, and while we are not quite yet ready to begin paying assessments of our own, in recognition of your support and in thanksgiving for the stability of our finances this year, we are excited to give a voluntary gift back to the diocese of $2,500. This amount is about 10% of what we will have received in support from all of you for the year 2024, and we're very grateful to be able to give back to our shared ministry.
And I am handing it to our financial officer.
I am also very excited that the Abbey will have some very big news to share on Monday. Unfortunately, I can't tell you about it today since it's part of a national press release, but if you want to be one of the first to know, make sure you sign up to get our emails. If you are not already on our list, come find me, and we'll make sure that you are part of that announcement on Monday. Switching hats almost entirely now, our diocese has joined the Iona Collaborative, which is a program of high-quality formation for everyone in the form of classes offered mostly on Zoom. I am excited to be taking on a new role in addition to my responsibilities at the West Central Abbey as the director of our Iona program, which will kick off in earnest in January with 2 classes, Bible and Preaching. Anyone can take the classes, which will be free. Bible will be a class which meets monthly and which will give you a strong foundation in Scripture. Preaching will be a more intensive class that will meet weekly and will teach you to craft and deliver a meaningful message for your congregational setting. I will be the instructor for these first 2 classes, which I'm really excited about. 1, because I love the Bible, and 2, because I firmly believe that everyone has good news to share. Not only that, but few things are as powerful as an authentic message offered by someone from your church for your church. So even if you have never considered preaching before, or maybe especially if the idea makes you a little nervous, I hope you will consider this Iona preaching class. I hope you will take seriously the possibility that the gospel according to you is something the world, or maybe just your little corner of it, needs to hear. I would love to talk with you more about our new Iona program, so come find me sometime this weekend. And I want to offer that as part of my director responsibilities, I would love to come supply for your congregation if you gather some people to have a conversation with me before or after worship about the formation needs of your congregation and how our Iona program can support and strengthen your ministry. So come find me this weekend. I'm kind of sitting in the back in the center there. One, either to make sure you are getting our West Central Abbey emails, so you are in the know about our big news on Monday, or to come talk to me about our new Iona classes and possibly schedule a time for me to come out and supply for your church. I am undaunted by long distances. I don't have to be back in Spokane until 4 o'clock for our Abbey services. So even if you're further away from Spokane, let's talk. Thank you all. It's truly a blessing and a joy to be in ministry with you as the Episcopal Diocese of Spokane.